This episode is brought to you by Affinity, the most trusted CRM for private capital.
Hello, and welcome back to Equity, TechCrunch's flagship podcast about the business of startups. I'm Marianne, and this is the episode where we bring on industry experts to help us explore a trend in the tech world and dive deep. Today, I'm joined by fellow TechCrunch senior reporter Charles Rollet to dig into the Deel versus Rippling drama that we have been covering over the past few months. There's a lot to unpack here, so stay with us. Charles, welcome to the show.
Thanks a lot for having me, Marianne. Appreciate it.
Of course, yeah. So I think there's been a few of us working on these stories over the past couple of months, probably arguably you more than anyone. But I'm going to give a quick backgrounder for our audience. First of all, Deel and Rippling both are what you kind of describe as HR tech and payroll companies. Both very large with valuations over $10 billion. They've been competitors for years, kind of mudslinging on social media for a while now, but things really escalated a couple of months ago when Rippling announced a lawsuit. This was in March against Deel as part of a 50-page complaint alleging racketeering, misappropriation of trade secrets, interference, unfair competition, aiding and abetting a breach of fiduciary duty. Basically, Rippling accused Deel of hiring one of Rippling's employees to spy on the company. So that happened in March. Deel vehemently denied that it did anything wrong legally. And then itself filed its own countersuit against Rippling in late April. In between, there's been a ton of things going on. Charles, do you want to kind of fill in some of those gaps?
I mean, there's so much to cover. It's a saga, basically. The big focus of the news was on this alleged spy. Like what Rippling claims was Deel bribing one of its staff to leak secrets, trade secrets, to Deel. People focused a lot on that, understandably, because this alleged spy released a affidavit, and this was part of Rippling's case. This alleged spy confessed to being paid by Deel, sending Deel a bunch of information about Rippling. And I think what made it notable was the focus on evidence. I mean, Rippling included a ton of evidence, like screenshots of chats, screenshots of receipts. It seemed like Rippling, at least as far as this went, had quite a good case. However, Deel has denied everything. And what's happened since this whole affidavit has been quite interesting. And so that's when I started covering this case. I didn't really cover the affidavit as much. I read it like every other journalist because it was really entertaining and interesting and
like a movie.
Like a movie.
It's like a movie.
Exactly.
Yes.
Like you wrote in a really good headline about it. There was a while where Deel was not being very public. They had denied the allegations, but basically where I picked it off was Irish business media were reporting that Rippling couldn't find Deel's CEO to serve him and other top executives of Deel to serve them. So I kind of wrote a quick piece about how Rippling's bailiffs can't find Deel's CEO. That actually attracted a lot of attention, and based on that, I was able to report that, at the time at least, Deel's CEO was in Dubai, which is kind of unique because Deel's CEO, he's known to travel a lot, but mostly he's known for being in France. He is French, and also Israel. He has a lot of family in Israel, or in New York, or Dubai was not really on the radar for him. And so it raised concerns from some people about oh man, is he trying to evade being served?
Right, because in Dubai, right, what is the rule there? You can't be extradited if you're in Dubai or something like that. Yeah.
It's complicated, but Dubai is kind of considered a safe haven for people who are avoiding legal issues or extradition or things like that. Definitely, yes.
Yes, now it has that reputation. So this raised eyebrows, right? Everybody's like, oh, okay, well, if he doesn't have anything to hide, why is he hiding? Where did he go? And so when they filed suit, I did ask Deel, well, can you comment on this? Where is Alex? His name is Alex. And forgive me if I butcher his name. I think it's Bouaziz.
Yeah.
So they told me at that time that they said, well, Alex lives in Israel, but he was in Dubai for a few days for Passover with his family. And, quote, they claim that was something he's done for the past several years. This coincidentally, the same time that Rippling was trying to, serve him with papers. So, that was interesting.
What's interesting to me, too, is that they still, maybe Deel has changed, so I should ask them again. But when I asked them fairly recently, okay, you said he was in Dubai just for a holiday, basically. can you say where he is now? And yeah,
they couldn't.
Deel will not comment on where the CEO is currently for privacy reasons, basically. And so I do wonder, most CEOs don't hide at least the country they're in. But, I think it's a sensitive time and there's no legal obligation to disclose which country you live in. And that's how Deel is doing it now. So I just thought that was interesting that even now, they're still not really commenting on the location of the CEO and other executives, but we'll see if that changes.
Yeah, we'll see. Interestingly, also in its countersuit, Deel made its own accusations against Rippling, including one saying that Rippling had solicited Deel employees to pass on to Rippling confidential, commercially sensitive information about Deel. So it's basically now accusing Rippling of doing what it was accused of, which was accusing Rippling of, quote, placing its own insider at Deel, essentially allowing it to eavesdrop on Deel's internal communications without Deel's permission. So, okay, I don't know what evidence it has of this. I have no idea. We don't know if that's true. In the case of Rippling's suit against Deel, we do have a confession, at least by this alleged spy, who detailed very explicitly all sorts of things, including how he was paid, text exchanges that he had with different members of the staff, including the CEO. It's really going to be very interesting to see how all this plays out. I think one thing that is also very interesting for our readers and listeners is the impact in general. Like on X, people have been kind of having a field day commenting about all of this. And honestly, I don't think it's really boding very well for either company. It seems like a lot of potential customers or current customers seem to be very turned off by the drama. And one person I think I read something like, I don't feel comfortable with either of these companies having my sensitive information. And so I'm curious to see how this is going to impact their businesses. Now, having said that, I did just report a few days ago that Rippling raised a Series G, a $450 million Series G at a $16.8 billion valuation. So looks like investors at least were not deterred by the drama, pouring more money into Rippling. And also, more drama, okay? Something else that Rippling revealed that is notable, they made a big deal of talking about the Y Combinator is now a customer. And Y Combinator, who Rippling was part of the winter 2017 cohort. And Y Combinator, in a case study, touted Rippling's offering as the HR, quote, tool of choice for all of the accelerator's founders. Okay, so why is that controversial? Well, it's controversial because Deel is also a Y Combinator grad participating in the winter 2019 cohort. So you almost wonder, is YC taking sides here? I mean, that's a very public support of one company over another. I mean, what do you think, Charles?
That's really interesting. I haven't looked into the YC angle specifically, but it is really notable that these two companies share like a very prominent investor and accelerator like YC. On the note about people being put off by the fight between both sides, and it's true that both sides are very publicly mudslinging, and nothing has been proven definitively against either Deel or Rippling. So some people can be put off. And I noticed right when Rippling first filed its suit, a competitor called remote.com posted a blog called Your HR Provider Should Be Drama-Free. So,
yeah, right.
So it's kind of an indicator of how cutthroat and competitive this HR tech industry really is, which is maybe surprising to some people. You think it's a bit boring, but turns out not so much.
Not at all. Yeah. Rippling CEO is Parker Conrad, and he used to run Zenefits, and there was a lot of drama upon his departure there. We don't need to get into all that right now, but I interviewed Parker on stage at Disrupt a few years ago. He's kind of known for being very outspoken and a bit of a controversial figure. Deel's CEO, Alex, I think he's actually co-CEO, or I could be wrong, or maybe he is CEO, but he has a co-founder. I don't remember her name off the top of my head. He's generally come across as very affable, in interviews and on social media. But when it comes to Rippling, he's not mincing words, I guess. He was pretty insulting, or at least the company was pretty insulting about Parker. In its countersuit, they basically described the executive as haunted by his previous failures and fueled by suffocating jealousy at his inability to fairly compete with Deel in the marketplace. So the talks are getting personal, right? It's not just about company versus company. I mean, they went after Parker as an executive. So it's getting ugly. It's been ugly. What is next anyway, Charles? Like, I'm curious, what's next?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, like I said, so far, nothing's been really proven in court or otherwise. I mean, what I'm watching, there's an involvement of another payroll giant. Well, sorry, it's not payroll. It's more of a fintech. It's called Revolut, one of the biggest fintechs in Europe. And they're involved because Rippling says that Deel bribed their employee, at least the first bribe payment. I think it was a $6,000 payment allegedly via Revolut to this alleged spy within Rippling. And so Revolut's involvement is like, of course, it's not directly involved. It's just a payments, it's just a fintech that did the transaction. Obviously, they're not the ones.
Yeah, they're not complicit.
They're not complicit. All right, Rippling isn't alleging they're complicit, but they are still technically suing them in Ireland to be able to get the specific transaction details of that Revolut transfer, because they want to be able to definitively prove that the person who made this payment to their employee was the wife of the COO of Deel, i.e. Deel.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. How many different people within Deel were allegedly involved in all of this, right? I mean, I can't keep count. I think there was the CEO, the COO, general counsel who happened to be Alex Bozzi's father, who also, he is a COO too,
He's the
right?
CFO. That's Philippe Bozzi's Alex's dad. Yeah. He's an interesting guy in his own right, a very successful French entrepreneur, tech entrepreneur, whose company went public and still exists in France. So yeah, it's a very interesting family. And I know there's others, I think other family members who work at Deel as well.
In the business of private capital, managing professional relationships can make or break deals, which is why Affinity's relationship intelligence platform automatically analyzes your team's network of connections across all communications channels. Affinity is used globally by over 3,000 firms and is the most trusted customer relationship management system for private capital. Their new AI-powered tool, Deel Assist, enables teams to converse directly with their Affinity CRM data to uncover new insights, which means less time entering data and more time doing what we want to be doing, finding and closing deals. See how Affinity can streamline your deal-making process at affinity.co.
Can we talk a minute, though, about the fact, another thing that I saw a lot of people commenting about on social media was that this alleged spy was getting paid $6,000 US dollars per month for all he was supposedly doing, which everyone was like, whoa, is that all? Like, I mean, is that all he got paid? Like, everyone was kind of shocked. Honestly, I won't say his name, but even though it's publicly out there, it sounds like this whole ordeal took its toll on this alleged spy. He seemed to be really struggling toward the end of when it was starting to come out that the spying took place. I think he almost kind of allegedly had some kind of nervous breakdown. And finally, I think people who knew him and knew what had happened encouraged him to just confess, because I think it was just really eating away at him from what I read. And so then I think that's when he finally just agreed to share details of what went down.
Yeah, that's what he says in the affidavit. But of course, Deel, I'm sure, would have a different take on why. I think Deel has been saying that this alleged spy was actually a whistleblower who was potentially finding out bad things that Rippling was doing regarding, sanctioned countries. He was a whistleblower supposedly for Rippling. So there's a lot of back and forth in this, and it's a bit hard to keep track, but...
Oh, that's right, because Deel's accusing Rippling of violating sanctions law in Russia.
Yep, and various other... Yeah, but I did find the discourse around the alleged bribe payments quite funny as well. I'm French, I'm not American, and so there's an ongoing debate in tech about Europeans, their salaries are so low, their tech companies are so small, and that became part of this discourse about only in Europe would someone accept $6K or $5K a month to spy.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yes, that was something I saw a lot about across X. So do you know if the papers were ever actually served?
So they were served, yeah. And Deel has been saying, look, we accepted service. We've agreed to accept service. There's no drama here, basically.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, they did agree to it.
They did agree. It's just that it took them a little bit of time to publicly agree to be served.
Yeah. It was Alex, lawyers, Asif Malik, and Andrea David Mealy. They all agreed to accept service through...
Exactly, through their Irish law firm. But that only happened about, I think, 2 weeks after we reported he was in Dubai. And at the time, Deel wasn't saying they were accepting service through a law firm. But within that time, they changed their law firm in Ireland. The new law firm says, actually, we can accept service and it's not a problem.
Okay.
So now the whole getting served drama, I think, is over, unless I don't see any indication that it's popping off again. So to me now, the big question is, like I said, will this Revolut payment transaction, like, first of all, will Revolut be able to disclose sensitive details about a transfer? Because in Europe, that's really difficult because of the GDPR. And usually companies can't disclose things like passport information or like sender details without a court order. I'm not sure if the Irish court can actually give an order for Revolut to reveal this. Rippling is trying, I think, but it's not clear to me if it'll be successful or not. So we'll see. And then it all hinges on whether the sender details turns out to definitively be the wife of Deel's COO, who is Dan Westgarth. And what I found quite interesting reporting this story was that at the time of this transaction, the wife of Deel's COO was apparently working at Robinhood in compliance.
Oh. Oh, wow. Gosh, wow. This is all, fintech is such a small world.
But this is all allegedly, because there's no,
Right.
The only proof Rippling has is that her first and last name are on the receipt of this Revolut transfer. But of course, there's lots of different people who could have that name. So that's why they're trying to get the real details behind it.
I thought it was interesting, too, that Deel's head of comms, Elizabeth Diana, she resigned pretty early into all of this. I think it was right after the affidavit came out. She didn't comment on her resignation, but I did find that interesting as well. And I think she was also named, right, in the suit?
Yeah.
Charles?
She was named in the suit, and Rippling alleged, and to be clear, I don't think Diana herself has responded to the allegations specifically against her from Rippling. But Rippling alleged that Diana was part of this kind of, I'm not sure they alleged that she knew that there was a spy, but they said she, as a communications person, was trying to give a reporter from the information some sensitive things about Rippling to try and make Rippling look bad in an upcoming feature article.
Oh, and was that information supposedly stuff they'd found out through the alleged spy?
I think so, yes. So, but
Okay.
to be clear, I'm not sure whether Diana herself actually knew where this information
Right, where
was coming from.
We don't know that.
Comms people, that is kind of their role, is to make a company look good. And I think it's not unheard of, but it is an interesting thing that she resigned and she hasn't publicly given any reason for it.
Right. And she'd been there for a few years. So, yeah, I mean, there's just so many moving parts. One thing, and I don't know if you know, Charles, I don't know if anybody knows, but one thing that I'm really curious about is if Rippling is able to prove that all these accusations are true, what can happen to Deel? Like, I've seen things, again, people are like, oh, that CEO needs to be arrested, but really is that, I don't know, does anybody know, like, what are the potential consequences for Deel? And even if Rippling too, if it really did have its own kind of spy, like, what can happen to them?
It's a great question, because amid all the drama, I think people might forget, like, none of these cases are criminal. This is all civil suits flying in the US and Ireland. Usually when there's accusations of this level, like, you will find things like the DOJ involved or things like that. Or sometimes, the DOJ investigates founders for lying to investors. And like, so far, I haven't seen any sign that this is actually anything criminal. So people speculating about Deel CEO is about to be arrested or Rippling likewise or whatever, I don't see any legal reason for that to be happening. But the problem is, though, that legal cases are unpredictable and you never know what could happen next with either party. So it's hard for me to speculate on the legal impact because I'm not a lawyer and it seems very complicated. What's interesting to me is the impact on things like Deel's upcoming IPO. Deel says publicly, like, they want to IPO soon. And this whole drama hasn't dissuaded them whatsoever. They recently made some legal team hires, as did Rippling. But with Deel, I think they mentioned in their announcement, we're hiring someone. One of the people they hired, they said, was like, this will help us clear the path for an IPO. And this was recently. This was well after this whole spy drama. So I think it just shows that Deel, at least publicly, is very clear that they want to IPO. Basically, they want to make it clear that this isn't affecting their prospects. And so what to me is really interesting is how will this case affect Rippling and Deel's things like valuations, IPO prospects, potentially leadership composition. I mean, you never know. With companies, sometimes there's drama around that. So far, there's no indication of that happening with either Deel or Rippling, but this case is explosive enough that it might cause some shakeups eventually. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
You never know.
Yeah, I am really curious to see what impact this could have on either business. And what could happen to any of the executives. Well, as I mentioned earlier, Rippling actually just had a big valuation jump. In April 2024, it was valued at $13.4 billion. And with this most recent round, which was announced just last week, 16.8. So again, so far, at least right now, doesn't seem to be hurting the company, but that remains to be seen. And you know that we're definitely going to be paying attention, but it looks like we are actually running out of time, Charles. And this went by really, really fast, as expected when we talk about such an interesting topic. But I'm excited and glad that you were able to hop on the mic and kind of go over this with me.
No, it's great talking with you, Marianne. And yeah, you've done great coverage on this case as well. And it can be really hard to keep track of all the accusations and the mudslinging, but it's definitely one of the most interesting startup dramas I've ever covered, and especially in such a kind of staid and old school industry as payroll and HR tech. Yeah, we'll keep close watch on what's going on. And, as always, head to TechCrunch for the latest updates, and we'll see what happens, basically.
You've had a bunch of awesome scoops, Charles. So thank you so much again for joining us on the show. To our listeners, you can find me on X at Bay Area Writer. Charles, where can they find you?
Yeah, you can find me on X at my name, so Charles Rollet. That's ROLLET 1. That's my handle on X.
Okay. So there's another Charles Rollet out there, I guess. Yeah.
There's an imposter. Actually, Charles Rollet is not an uncommon name in France. There's a bunch of us, so make sure you find the right one.
The right one. Has one at the end.
Yeah.
And then you can also follow Equity at Equity Pod. Thank you all so much for listening in. Talk to you next time. Bye-bye.
Equity is produced by Theresa Loconsolo with editing by Kell. We'd also like to thank TechCrunch's audience development team. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.